Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Megaman Battle Network Operate Star Force. In the last part, we started off the post-game going after a bunch of Navis in the process, and now it's time for us to continue doing just that across the later portions of the Undernet. Now, this is probably where you're going to end up spending most of your time in the post-game, especially if you didn't explore this area prior to the endgame, as there's a lot of new viruses throughout the later Undernet. And because of that, there's a lot of Battleships to get in this later sector. More than you'd even think, because now that you've beaten the game, some new enemies that you couldn't fight until post-game have spawned. They are the main reason you need to save your clear save at the end of the main storyline. Later battle networks would kind of vary where you have to go because of the better semblance of completions they added into the game, like needing to get all chips of a certain class or all program advanced memos, meaning you had more short-term and long-term goals to work on. Additionally, the later Battle Network games, I feel, do a better job of placing viruses in areas that aren't just the main internet, as there's some that are better to find in the main scenario computers, some that are better to find in just random computers. Admittedly, BN1 does a little bit of the latter of those two, as I think like Cloud 1s are best found, if not only easily findable, in the TV computer in the Waterworks lobby and things of that nature. Same with some things being exclusive to certain people's home pages, like one of the Piranhas is best found there for one of those chips, and I think that's where you can also best find the first variant of the jellies. But by and large, most viruses in the game you can find across just the main internet. With that said, our other goal here in Undernet 7, we need to get the later 2 Bomb Man chips. So I'm looking for 2 Bomb Man 3s to take out so I can get Bomb Man 2 and 3. Plain and simple. Now, one thing I can recommend, if you're having trouble running into boss fights in Battle Network 1, and this applies to the original or the remake, save manipulation, honestly. What that is, you save the game, you soft reset, and when you load back in, you run until you get into a battle. If it's not the boss, just soft reset and try again. Because the Battle Network's RNG for 1, and I think Operate Star Force and BN2 to an extent, is consistent but between the seeded on as long as you soft reset the game, I think. So eventually you'll just get it right if you time things slightly differently and all that. That's better abused by speedrunners through at least the first 3 battle networks, I believe, because you can just soft reset and do things consistently through manipulations and all that over and over again. It's how they get a lot of chips and stuff. If you haven't seen an Alpha Omega speedrun of Battle Network 3, please look into it, especially like the task that's out there. It's insane, but also super impressive in terms of the passion and memorization needed for that, because goddamn, I love some games, but there's very few I have memorized to that exact degree. And damn near every single Battle Network speedrunners chat I've been on and like Twitch and stuff has just been a great community. If you ever have questions about how things work in depth that I don't answer, or game facts and stuff can't answer, check out our speedrunners chat, like Smog BM, Reish, Chaotic, Terraj. They'll all explain pretty easily to you if you actually have legitimate questions. With that said, time for us to take care of Magic Man V2, who is not that much different. I think the only thing that changes is maybe the rate at which he spawns viruses. And admittedly, the viruses are the worst part about going for high ranks on Magic Man, because as you can see, he can summon some annoyances between Megalians and Swordy 3s. But it's in this case that you can probably get some good use out of things like Sharkman. Now, something I'm not too certain of when it comes to Magic Man in this game is in terms of busting rank, if the double/triple deletion bonus can apply. Because it's a boss fight. You would normally never have a chance to double delete in those. So, I would assume it doesn't. Okay, that's just bullshit. Really? Your fire counts as an active thing I can run into? That's just rude, Magic Man. Magic Man might be one of my favorite knobby updates of a classic Robot Master. I don't know why, I like the generic wizard look. Admittedly, it took me some time, and by time I mean years, to realize that that's not meant to be a beak, that is meant to be a wizard beard. But you know what? I kind of like him looking like a plague doctor, so it's cool. It's cool. And that's V2 done with. Also, one thing I should note, I am trying my best from memory throughout the recordings to show you my library / folder where I can, to show you what we're looking like in terms of the chips completed and what my active folder's evolving into. Because I am making minor adjustments throughout as it approaches closer something to its final form. It's just sometimes I forget to update. And if I do, I'm sorry. Again, with Battle Network by and large, especially starting in, I'd say maybe 2 or 3 beyond, you don't really have to worry about, oh, what if I want to use this chip for this because it'd be so much better than this? Because the series is so malleable with what's good and what can be good strategies that it doesn't ultimately matter as long as you do it within the objectives for getting a high rank. With that said, since we took care of V2, we're looking now for Magic Man V3 for 2 chips, and I forget which one I get right here. That's the V3. I know I haven't updated on like what bosses give at what levels when it comes to the random encounter version of them, but that's because by and large it's always the same. For instance, you can always get their first version of a chip starting at rank 5 through 7, 7 through 10 can give you V2, and 8 through S can give you V3. They never really change when it comes to that unless it's a few specific bosses who deliberately drop something else. Now, at this point, you may have actively run into a certain virus that I haven't showed off on camera here in Undernet 10 and beyond, namely Undernet 10 and 11. The only reason I'm not showing that off, as I mentioned, I believe when we were first exploring this area, is because I'm waiting until I have a successful run against it, because it's kind of an annoying virus. Why? It's the only one that can actively run away in the game. More on that later. I'd argue as well, Battle Network 1's probably the most annoying version of it in terms of what you can do to potentially fight against it. Because pause buffering only goes so far. More on that again later. Now, at this point, I'm looking for Magic Man again because I need to get him from other stuff, but also along the way, I ran into our next virus. This is the final variety of the Cloud line. This is Cloudy 3, or Heavy Cloud, I think. 160 HP, 120 damage. They can drop the cloudiest chip. It's the same thing as usual. You throw the rain in front of you, and it goes up and down across a single column, dealing 100 damage. With that said, I still need to get its Battlechip. But along the way, I did run into the Big Snake 2, 250 HP, 200 damage. You can drop Snake Egg 2. As for what rank those particular past 2 chips drop at, Cloudest / Cloudiest / Heavy Cloud drops from rank 5 and above, whereas Snake Egg 2 drops from rank 5 or above. Again, like the other Snake Eggs, try and get the asterisk code if you can. Undernet 10 is probably the area, barring maybe Undernet 12 or 11, that's going to have the most viruses for you to get things from. Because I think the enemies that they each have are more or less exclusive to those areas. Now, at this point, while I'm grinding, I should probably talk about program advances more in depth. Because I've been using Gut, Shoot, and Big Straight almost the entire game at this point, but there are a number I haven't used. I've only used maybe 2, when there are a total of 38 of them in Operate Star Force. Now, they come in a couple of different flavors and varieties, namely the Zeta, Omega, Beta, and I think Sigma ones are the main ones, and then you got the actually interesting ones, the Special Series. To go over what those individual series are, Zeta series requires you to use a single type of a battle chip in 3 sequential chip codes to use a version of that battle chip in repeatedly for a limited time, usually 5 seconds. The Omega series is that previous thing, but it lasts for 10 seconds and requires all 5 of a respective chip's code. For instance, Zeta Cannon requires maybe Cannon A, B, and C, but Omega Cannon requires cannons A through E. Both of those types of program advances, which I'll be listing the actual individual ones of probably in a little bit, are useful, but they can often take up too much folder space, I feel, that can be used for better things. What is admittedly more interesting is the Beta and Sigma series. Those require you to use different chips of a matching code to basically spam some of those randomly for 6 to 9 shots, whether it's Beta or Sigma. For instance, Little Bomb, Cross Bomb, and Big Bomb on the B code, which allow you to throw bombs randomly of any of those 3 types 6 times. Sword, Wide Sword, and Long Sword S can be random sword attacks 6 times, things like that. Sigma is usually any combination of those 3 types of chips, but with more than one of certain chips. So, for instance, Sigma Bomb is Little Bomb B, Cross Bomb B twice, and then Big Bomb B twice, which is 9 times the uses of the bomb. To go over the exact lists of the Zeta through Sigma series, there's, by the way, right here is where you fight Clockman V2, as I mentioned before, as I'm going over this fight. There's Zeta Cannon, which is cannons A through C, B through D, or C through E. And there are 3 variants of that, going with cannons, high cannons, and mega cannons, which are F through H, G through I, H through J code for Zeta Cannon 2, K through M, L through N, or M through O for Zeta Cannon 3, Zeta Spreader, which is 3 spreaders in any code, alphabetically ordered, Zeta Raton, Zeta Raton 2, Zeta Raton 3, Zeta Arrow, which is the arrow code from which is the arrow chip rather from the Piranha viruses, Zeta Spear, which is the same thing, and Zeta Lance, though that one's not too bad, admittedly. And then Omega, for instance, is Cannon A through E. Omega Cannon 2 is High Cannon F through J. Omega Cannon 3, K through O. 5 spreaders in alphabetical order. Raton 1, 2, 3, Arrow, Spear, Lance, the likes. Beta series, you got Beta Bomb, which is Little Bomb, Cross Bomb, and Big Bomb B. Beta Sword, which is Sword, Wide Sword, and Long Sword S. Beta Wave, which is Shock Wave, Sonic Wave, and Dyna Wave C codes. Beta Quake, which is Quake 1, 2, and 3 Q code. And then Sigma Sword would be Sword, 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 Wide Sword, Long Sword. Sigma Wave, Shock Wave, Sonic Wave, Dyna Wave C, in any order of multiples, that is. And Sigma Quake, which is just 5 Quake chips. Then you get to the ones that have unique animations and are actually kind of cool chips. For instance, Powered Cannon, which is Shotgun K, Crossgun K, Spreader K, and Mega Cannon K. It does 200 damage. Your Mega Buster becomes a giant screw you cannon that acts as a spreader, damaging the entire 9 squares that around the thing it hits for 200 damage. Heavy Stamp, which is Gaia 1C, 2C, 3C, and Quake 3C. This is 400 damage. Mega Man's foot becomes a giant cartoonish weight, and he falls on one enemy, dealing that damage. Big Straight, we've seen the entire game. It's Guts Punch, Cold Punch, and Dash Attack, all matching codes, 250 damage. Blood Suck, which is one I really should try using more often because it is kind of interesting. It's Drain 1, 2, 3, and Wave A codes, where you shoot basically giant doctor's needles across the entire arena. Any enemies that are hit are damaged, and the HP you absorb from them with that 200 is absorbed into your own. The next one is Death Storm, which is Typhoon, Hurricane, Cyclone, and Repair G codes, which does 200 damage with a giant jet. It looks cool. Guts Shoot, we've been using the entire game. It's Met Guard, Dash Attack, and Guts Man G codes. Lifesaver is an interesting one. That's Barrier R, Aqua Aura R, and any of the roll chips, which fully heals Mega Man's HP and makes him invincible for 30 seconds. Which that could be useful, but the R code I find is just a relatively meh one in this game with the chips I can use with it. So not exactly one I like to use. Plus it doesn't do damage. And then the final program advanced in the original game is one known as Double Hero, which is Fighter Sword B, Knight Sword B, Hero Sword B, and then any one of the 3 Proto Man chips. This does 400 damage to the entire enemy side of the field. Appropriately powerful for what is in the original game the final program advance, so to speak. There are 2 more, but I'm not going to talk about them until I actively do them in the LP because they're exclusive to Operate Star Force, and I might as well leave you in suspense somehow, right? Later games, as I mentioned before, would introduce something known as the Program Advanced Memo, which factors into completion, which will mark down any program advance you've done after you figured them out, as well as any other potential codes they could work with. So it could show the 3 types of Zeta Cannon, for instance. They would add a completion star to the title screen in the later games to mark that you've done every single program advance, and that would usually allow you to maybe open a door in those games' respective post-game areas, or grab some new item or reward. So there was some reason to do them all. Here in Operate Star Force, it does nothing. There's no program advance memo, so I'm not doing every program advance. I'm just sticking with the 5 or so I like to use, including the 2 that are added to this version. With that said, by and large at this point, the route through to Undernet 8, I've gotten most, if not every Battlechip in along the way, but there is something new for us here in Undernet 8 that is the main reason you want to come here outside of the shop if you haven't come here yet in post-game. That is, after you've beaten the life virus, at the end of this ramp, a new boss fight has spawned for us. Then it's not marked in the map, you just kind of have to walk into it like it's a V2 fight. This is Pharaoh Man, who's a bit of a tricky fight. He himself stays only along the back column, meaning things like the bomb chip lines or swords that can hit 3 tiles in front of you, or Navi chips, pretty useful here. His main attack is just to have sarcophagi fall from the sky and spawn something out of them that usually affects the row they land on somehow, be it a laser, ratons that go the entire way across, spawning in a stone cube, things like that. Otherwise, his main attack is Pharaoh Trap, which is basically a mine battleship that you can see that has a couple of different effects, namely a snake that can, I think, track Megaman for a good while, and Anubis that can poison your side of the field until you destroy it, things like that. He's relatively straightforward, but if you're just exploring this area and not aware he's going to be here, he can be a bit of a problem. Actually, wait, I'm thinking about it. I think I'm actually missing something. He spawns after the life virus, yes, but I think Mega Man's level also needs to be above 70, I want to say. And for beating him, we just get his Battlechip, which is, I believe, a laser across every single one of the rows on the enemy side of the field. And that deals, I think, 120 damage here in Operate Star Force, 20 less in BN1. And now that we've taken care of him, his V2 spawns as a random encounter. With that said, only his V2 spawns. The two of the 3 post-game exclusive bosses to BN1 do not have V3 forms. In fact, the last one doesn't even have a V2. But the annoying thing with Pharaoh Man V2 is he's in charge of every other Pharaoh Man ship. He has Pharaoh Man 1 at ranks 5 through 7, Pharaoh Man 2 at ranks 7 through 10, Pharaoh Man 3 at 8 through S, but that's not all. He has another battleship, the Anubis battleship, available at ranks 8 through S. What Anubis does is you spawn the Anubis in front of you, and then it shoots out waves of poison across any enemy tiles that do damage continually to anyone who touches it. Admittedly, not a bad strategy for parts of the super bosses in some of the later games it appears in, but it's not a chip I like to use. It's not even part of a program advanced here in BN1. Later game appearances it is, not so much here. I think it does 20 damage per every tick that it hits the enemy or so. Can be useful, just not very. At least not so much in terms of getting like high busting ranks against non-boss fights, I should note. Part of it is just my gameplay style for the Battle Network games is relatively up-in-your-face aggression against viruses in most cases. So actively poisoning them to death just doesn't really mesh with my playstyle. Other people, maybe less so. Maybe it's exactly what they need because they want to be safe. But while I'm here in Undernet 8, I might as well grab some more of the HP memories because I need a lot of Zenny in order to get the rest of them in the game. Same with the last power-ups. And while I'm here grinding out Pharaoh Man's 3 other battleships I still need to get, might as well grab the Gaia 2 chip from the Gaia 2s. This is what I mean by editing the post-game for these games is a little weird, because I can be trying to get goal A done, but then I accidentally get a part of goal B done along the way, so it just kind of ends up flippy-floppy. The way some people handle that I've seen Battle Network LPs done from, is they do a massive fast-forwarded ship grind for the non-important fights, and then just do the important stuff from there on. I'm particularly looking at a certain Green Dragon who did that. But for my style, at least how I tend to record, I'd rather just get as much done in a straight line as I can without having to worry about putting off certain objectives until later. Again, technically up to preference, as a lot in Battle Network is. Though I should note, the latter method is technically aided a bit by the structure in the later games that I mentioned before for its post-game, where it's more so a factor of get minor goal A done like 3 different ways along the way to major goal B, with how the post-game areas are laid out. BN1 structure is, once again, its potential greatest downfall, but I know some people do adore the simplicity of the first game and how you have to approach things. Personally speaking, I'd rather not. The Ferryman ship itself, by the way, isn't too bad. It's just the P code limits it a bit, because G, B, and S are just some of the best codes in BN1 period, so anything that doesn't fall into that can be a little lackluster. Admittedly, it's a bit better to do that in, say, OSS because of the addition of the asterisk code, but that's neither here nor there. With that said, with all the chips we've gotten thus far, there are only 27 remaining in the game. Technically, there's a couple more than that, but we'll get into that when we get into it. The main thing is we're missing an entire Navi chip line still somehow, because that is another boss fight that has not yet spawned. But we're going to get into that next part. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 25, more post-game chip grinding. See you guys then.